this one. All right, I am calling the special board meeting of Tuesday, December 19th, 2017 to order. And Clerk Talamas, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Clerk Talamas, would you take the roll call?
Assessor Boylan Cry.
Here.
Highway Commissioner Kazmierczak. Here. Clerk Chilamas here. Supervisor Morass.
Here.
Trustee Jones.
Here.
Trustee Caraboda. Here. Trustee McKenzie.
Here.
And Trustee Sweet.
Here.
All right, this meeting is called for the sole purpose of the final numbers for the township levy and the general road and bridge levy. Having said that, before I get started, do we have any public participation at this time? Hearing no public participation, we are going to all right, I'm going to do a little recap. At the last board meeting, we were required to do an estimated levy, which was a 3-2 vote to reduce the levy by 5%. In that interim, we have, as you see from your agenda and the board packet, we have sent 3 other proposed levies. One that keeps it flat, but addresses some of the concerns that I heard at the board meeting, and another one that reduces it 5%, but reduces it from other funds other than across the board, and the third one being the estimated one that was ultimately voted on. And I also enclosed in your packets some other informational items, one from Assessor Maine Township, and she will speak to some of those, as well as some of the issues that we're dealing with in why I believe it is good government for this township to keep it flat for the last year that we are able to keep it flat. So I'm going to read my statement into the record. All right. So please find enclosed for your perusal 3 separate levy proposals taking into consideration some of the board's comments from the prior board meeting. First, though, I would like to try to explain why it is so important, in my opinion, Assessor Cry's opinion. We will be enclosing a separate letter to you that we keep our levy flat for the final year we are allowed to do. First off, there might be some misunderstanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but our reserves are right where they should be. They are in using reserves as an operating fund, which is what may have to occur if the levy were lowered, is not sound fiscal practice. There is a lot of articles in Park Ridge about lowering their levy. I sent you all an amended statement along with the actual notice that Park Ridge put up online, in the paper, which pointed out that they were lowering the levy in their debt service fund. The reason they were able to do that had to do with the TIF. That portions of the TIFs had already come due, so the tax money was no longer frozen. As I also point, but their overall levy is going to be increased, or at least that's what the notice was. I did not watch the city council meeting. However, in any event, you can't compare a municipality to a township. As Susie will also tell you, a municipality gets sales tax revenue, has numerous debt service funds, TIFs, and other funds that theoretically make money. So when they lower those funds, then a taxpayer might see a corresponding reduction in their property tax because they get sales tax. We do not get sales tax. The only thing the township is funded by is property tax. So if we keep it flat, we're only allowed to do this for 3 years. Keeping it flat for the last allowable year will allow the township to capture any new business construction costs. Susie will also tell you that there has been quite a bit of new construction. It will guarantee that the clerk's office will fund us with 3%, possibly more, depending on the new business construction. And it doesn't make any governmental good sense to lower the levy because there will not be a correspondingly lower property tax assessment for the portion of the Maine Township property bill. I had talked to some of you and asked you to look at your bill, and I don't know if you had a chance to do that. Mine was absolutely 1.4. So in actuality, all the people who successfully contest their property tax, and we last week had a pile that I received of about, I don't know, it was 6 to 10, and that's just one pile. I get a copy of all of them, and these are ones that are going to the Board of Review. And if they successfully contest, that will come out of whatever we levy. So if you lower the levy, which is actually translating into $250,000, you won't even get that amount that you're lowering it because the entire total amount of successful property tax appeals will be taken off the lowered amount. So if you lower it, the clerk takes us at our word that we don't need this money to fund operations. Not to mention, here's another point that I don't know if it was driven home at the last board meeting. When you lower it, that's your starting point next year. And next year we absolutely have to raise. So you're going to be raising it by a correspondingly higher amount. If you lower $250,000, that money is coming from somewhere. And you all did really great on the agency funding. I want to commend everybody for taking the time to really study it. But my point is that we have several bills that are coming up in Springfield that can affect us. One of them, the reintroduction of the property tax freeze. If there is a property tax freeze, it will be frozen if you lower it at the lower amount. And then we're pretty much in some very bad, possibly bad trouble because we have some fiscal uncertainties in the coming year. You have your health care costs for the employees. This is the last year that we're allowed to be in a grandfathered plan. Having said that, that doesn't mean that Blue Cross, with the uncertainty with the ACA and what's going on with Obamacare, our insurance person has pretty much assured us it's going up. It's just a matter of how much it goes up. And we won't know any of those estimated costs until March or April. If you looked at any of the articles that I provided, Mount Prospect and Wheeling both had to raise taxes significantly this year because they cut their levies too much in previous years without an assessment of a need to do so. So now their respective communities are very upset with their respective boards. And so looking out for our board, in addition to healthcare costs, we have capital outlay that we won't know That's what we're gonna be doing in January, February, and March is the budget. But this year, so our building is really old, it's on the historical registry, which makes it far more expensive to fix and to keep up. It needed to be painted this year, I didn't do that. I didn't think the cost was just too high, and it wasn't something that, I thought we could go one more year. We have some masonry cracks in the foundation. The same with the parking lot. I did a quick fix. Dave, the new tech, and I, and Dana, we did cracks, but to really fix that parking lot so seniors and anybody don't trip, it has to be completely sanded down with a new lot board. We are hiring a new auditor, accountant. We put out a request for proposal. We haven't had to hire an auditor for 20 plus years, so we don't know what that, we put out a request for proposal to, I believe, 5 people now. Claire's been an enormous help in this endeavor. So these are just some of the things. If the levy is cut, in my opinion, this will hurt our residents we serve because fees might need to be increased. We're possibly one of the few townships where you can get psychiatric help on a sliding scale that I believe starts at, or the highest is $20. And also, as I said, with agency funding, with the way the state is going, we're probably going to get another, bigger request next year. So with the specter of Springfield reintroducing the property tax freeze bill, that would be lowered at the frozen at the lower amount and eventually have to dip into reserves and may well need to make program cuts. So, as I said at the beginning, we prepared for your perusal 3 different levy scenarios. The first is keeping it flat, but reducing some general assistance amounts to bring them in line with what some of you were mentioning at the board meeting. By law, GA must be funded with at least 0.10%, which we absolutely have. But we do have room to lower it, as you will see, the admin cost, because I did save the township quite a lot by reducing mailings and other efficiencies, particularly the office-wide program of ordering office supplies quarterly. Also, please note, even if GA was lowered, they suddenly opened a lot of new direct shelter cases, town fund can always transfer to GA. GA cannot transfer any extra or reserves to town fund. So GA's reserves are off the table for any use other than GA. Wanted you to take a look at the flat levy proposal where we cut GA, used realistic past numbers, and put that difference into township items that are projected to need it. You can change among funds. To me, this is the best one, as it takes into account some of your concern, yet still allows the township to capture the 3% and more any additional from new business construction. Also, it would not raise anyone's tax bill. And the second levy that we enclosed was with a 5% reduction, but taking it mostly from GA and putting the money into town fund for the same reasons as above. The third levy, which I think really makes no sense, is cutting it 5% equally across all funds. In closing, I sincerely hope you all can look at these and understand that essentially what may seem like a win and a nice soundbite for the residents we serve, if you reduce $250,000, is not ultimately a win for our residents. And come next November, it may and probably will put our board in a precarious position. So, having said all that, I know that Assessor Moylan Pride can better explain the concept of PTEL and PTAB and what happens when the property tax owner appeals and wins, if you don't mind.
Well, one thing that the township is getting copies of right now
is anything through PTAB that they're asking for a reduced assessment of over 100,000. And if you see something that I did put in your packet, I just gave you one in particular, and how much then that would reduce, taxes coming in to the township. The thing about going into PTAB, first of all, you're going through the board of review, and that means to go to PTAB, they do not acknowledge your reduction in assessed value. So your next course of action would be to go into PTAB. So you have to register for that within about 30 days, but not to say that your case is going to be heard in that length of time. PTAB is backed up, like any agency, throughout the county, and the board cannot handle as many cases that come in. So it is a little bit backlogged. So to get that information and get that final result takes some time. I cannot tell you when that time would be. It also, these people that are going to PTAB are coming in with heavy guns. This particular one that I did give you, they went for 2 appraisals. So they're bringing that to PTAB to show them, that they have these appraisals to take into account. And generally, that's what that is. When you're going into PTAB, you have had additional documentation for your cause and for your action.
Can you just refresh them what PTAB means?
PTAB, that's the
Property tax.
I can never remember.
property tax assessment.
Appeal board.
Assessment board, thank you. I'm so used to saying PTAB.
I know.
And they do hearings, actually here in Des Plaines, and they do hearings in Springfield. So there's two locations that they do them at, and downtown. But besides this assessed value over 100,000, we have to think about all of them that are under 100,000. So within our office, when we filed for a lot of people for the board review, the question on the form is, would you like to continue this and have a hearing? In this respect, think about just what comes through our office. There's people who file by themselves, and there's people who hire attorneys to do this for them. What happens is the result of this, because they are coming in with heavy guns and more ammunition and more documentation, if they are granted it, we won't know that till down the line. And if they are granted that comes off of our tax revenue. So we will be void that money.
And then, I'm sorry, did you say, and I may have missed it, and that you had a certain amount or one of the larger amounts of property tax appeals in what you were just talking about, the PTABs?
Yes, we did have a number of, I don't have that number now, of the appeals that we did, but I think it's over 4,000.
For just this board of review time, we did 1,278, just for board of review alone.
1,278 individual appeals
in our
that went.
office for 2017, that's correct. For the board of review only, which is an all-time high for us because it's not a reassessment.
Right.
So 1,278, if
Just an
they
amount.
all got reduced,
Or
won their
yeah.
cases.
We don't know.
We don't
No,
know
I'm
decision.
saying that,
Nobody got a
decision.
letter from the board of review.
Right.
If their assessments have been reduced.
I'm
So
just
when they-
saying, when they do get that letter and if they won, then that would come off, whatever.
No, if they
levy-
won, then it comes off of this new tax bill that does come out. So because that's in time. But the ones that did not receive it,
I
then
got
it's after the fact. Right.
I got you.
There's no way of estimating how much of.
Okay. But that is, and also, can you speak a little bit to, you and I had talked, and we were talking about the new construction that was going on in unincorporated
Right.
Des Plaines, and what happens if we
Well,
lower, we don't get
We
it.
won't be able to capture that.
Right. Do you guys
And there's new
understand?
projects that are going on in Park Ridge also, but in Des Plaines, there's 2 big projects going on. There's, they're talking about the other one going up, on East River Road, but down on the two.
Something's already getting built there.
Lee Street.
Lee Street, the one off of Northwest Highway is Lee
Little
Street.
few site.
Little View site. So there's different, yes.
And then Park Ridge is doing the memory assisted living senior place at Greenwood and Bussey, as well as 2 other large construction projects. So those were some of the things that we wanted to mention to you, as well as I think this went out in your first packet that 99% of townships had either kept theirs flat or raised it. The only one I saw that had lowered it was Northfield. However, their levy overall was much higher than ours, and they are a different community than our unincorporated, and I do not believe that they have as many municipalities within their township that in which one can capture the new construction. So, having said all that, to get this started, I'm going to ask for a motion to pass levy number 1, which is ordinance number 2007-14, that the sum of $5,591,454 are hereby levied upon all property subject to taxation within the township, and waive the rest of the reading therein. This is the levy where everything starred has been adjusted to address some of the concerns, and it also had the worksheet that showed a second copy with it that showed the worksheet of the map. So I'm going to ask for a motion to pass that levy, which would be keeping it flat.
Is this appropriate time to ask questions about?
Well, first I have to pass the motion. I mean, we have to do the
Well, we'll
motion.
just open up and then.
Right,
discuss
and then
it.
we do the discussion. That's why I was.
Well, you have to make the motion before we discuss it, that's a, yeah.
So if you want to
So
make.
yes, yeah. Okay, so I'll make the motion. Motion to pass general town fund and general assistance tax levy ordinance 2017-4.
Okay, that is in the amount of $5,500.
Oh, in the amount of $5 million,
I'm sorry.
excuse me, $5,591,454.
I'll second that motion. All right, having a motion and a second. Now, is there any discussion?
So I don't understand the new construction point that both you, Laura, and Susan were trying to make. I mean, I understand there's 2 big construction projects in Des Plaines, and there's something going on in Park Ridge, but I don't understand what you mean by we won't be able to capture that.
Okay, so if you keep it flat, Cook County, or even if you raised it actually, Cook County is only going to give you basically what they want to give you. But they're never going to give you less than 3% or the cost of living, because they want to make sure the local municipality can operate. You have a chance, Dave talked about it a little bit last time, of capturing more, which is PTEL, I believe. I got the phrase right. From the new construction. And you won't get that. If you lower it, they will give you, there's no uncertainty. It's that amount, well, there is uncertainty, it's that amount minus any successful property tax appeals. And you absolutely cannot get any of the extra. This year, for example, I think Road and Bridge got some extra, $750,000. Town Fund got some extra. Last year we didn't. So this is a variable that is not under our control. The only part that's under our control is if we don't keep it flat or raise it, you don't get it. Does that answer that question? I didn't make the rules, but that is what Cook County does.
This idea of being able to capture this new construction, so does that mean that the new construction is somehow praised? Is there something about the new construction that we get a piece of? Okay, how does that work? Because I mean, if it's new construction,
It's
don't you have
assessed.
to wait
It's
until
assessed.
another year before it gets assessed? I mean, like, I know when we built our house, it was a whole nother cycle before the assessment caught up to the value, or value caught up to the assessment, whichever way it was. So like new construction, how would we capture that in this year's levy versus next year's levy?
Any properties that are bought and sold, and then they have to be assessed.
I'm speaking of the new construction and the point that we would not capture this new construction piece. If, like, how does the new construction piece get captured?
Because it goes on the tax records, it gets a PIN number, it's assessed, it goes on the tax rolls.
It gets assessed like any other, commercial property gets assessed differently, so you can't really analogize your house. It gets assessed much differently and on a different time scale. I'm not an assessment expert, but
I'm not asking about the assessment.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, so I understand that commercial property is different than residential.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have used my house as an example, but what I'm saying is this capturing, the word capturing, we won't be, what is it that we capture?
Well, like I said, we got extra money from the Cook County Clerk's office that was based on whatever last year's commercial property assessment was, which we wouldn't have gotten. We kept this a third year if we do this, that we'd be keeping it flat. So that's what Susie was trying to explain at the last meeting. There's really no good government principle for not keeping it flat. The third year you can, because it's gonna catch up with you, right?
These big parcels are only like one PIN number. When they're developed and divided and then sold, they have to have a separate PIN number, so they acquire new PIN numbers for the property. And according to how, you know, the property, where it's at and how it's built, you still have to pay taxes on it. You still tax it.
And also, for each of the municipalities, the municipalities are going to get the local government replacement tax, which we don't get that either, which there's currently a bill, I believe, pending. I think I gave you a copy of the article. There's a bill pending that should take that away completely. But I think that we get a portion because we don't have, the clerk doesn't have to give it to it. Okay, so the local government replacement tax goes to the clerk's office. So if they get that, this is how I see from my research that they have the ability, along with whatever new construction, to be able to give the local, whatever, this township, extra if it's pertinent. Like I said, Dana has a list, we talked about it last time, that some years it goes up, some years we get exactly what we levy. But what it would do is guarantee that you have a steady operating fund of keeping it flat, of what we had, and so you get 3%, which tracks, or the cost of living, whichever one, but you're not going to get lower.
Okay.
And you may get higher. And then that higher is always going to be used. I mean, it's not coming from the property owner. That's what I'm sort of trying to get at, is it's not coming from the individual property owner. So lowering it Correspondingly, next year, in the March, I think it's the first installment, you're not gonna have a lower property tax bill from Maine Township's portion.
Just a
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry. Sir, would you like to come up? And just state your name.
Hi, my name is Donna Adam, and I'm from Des Plaines. I was here last month when you were talking about lowering the assessment, the levy by 5%. And, I listened to the numbers, and that would equate to about $250,000. And I don't believe that goes low enough. I think that you should lower the levy by a full 10%. Because I looked at the budget at the annual report from last year, and I saw that there was an excess of more than that amount. So I think that if we would lower it even more to a number like 10%, that would eat away at the excess that we have, and we would still have enough money to operate. And then at that point, Maine Township could start looking at some ways in order to cut costs, such as things like looking at putting the newsletter on electronic instead of mailing it out. Because when you mail to 135,000 people, that's a lot of mail costs. So I would like to see the board to even look to go further at cost savings and give the citizens of Maine Township a break. Just like we saw that, Cook County, they did a really big increase to the beverage tax, and that really outraged everyone. But if they do it in small increments, they could have accomplished the same thing and taxed until people, can't take it anymore. But because they did it so quickly, everybody was outraged. I think in the same way, if we were able to do a really big decrease to the levy, that we would make news by doing that. And Maine Township is one of the, because that you have operated so well over the years and have not increased the cost like other townships have, that we are in a unique spot that we would be able to do such a thing and still live within our means. So I would like the board to consider such a thing.
Thank you.
Can I?
Oh, I mean,
Yes.
it's not really for public debate. You can discuss it up here.
Well, I'm just looking at the audit report and trying to figure out what number Donna. I'm sorry.
Adams.
You said the audit report, right?
Yeah, from last year.
Only looking at go ahead.
So I don't know if you have it in front of you, Donna, but I'm looking at, did you look at February 28th, 2017?
Yes.
Okay, so I see where you're saying that the audited number is lower than the proposed 5% reduction, but I think we'd be coming really close to the 10% on that particular, the general town fund with GA included. Now, when you turn to GA, actually the number that we're looking at with the levy number 2 is slightly lower, not by much, like $9,000 lower than the actual expenses. So that's a little bit, that wasn't what I had talked about, and these are all just categories, and we are actually top heavy on GA and our reserves.
Well, that's without looking, you're just
So-
saying to meet the expenses, but if you then look for opportunities to save, you could get below.
But Donna, we are going to do that in our budget.
Yeah, I don't feel
It's not
comfortable
the
with
levy
that,
that
but
does that.
I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same numbers.
For the record, I'd like to talk
talk a little bit about the numbers and what we're looking at to consider, and for the public to understand. So the levy to stay flat, which actually, Laura, as you had said this, flat also allows you the opportunity in this third year to capture another 3%. So in
Not
fact,
another,
well, the CPI index,
correct, but the regular 3% or the
up
CPI,
3%
one or the
above
other.
what is flat.
Right.
So I just want to be clear,
Right.
it's not truly flat when you can increase it upwards of 3%.
No,
So that
it's,
people understand that's why we.
it
have
is
a
flat
little bit more
though.
than
They're
we
not
do.
paying it. It is flat because we are not levying anymore.
So I think this is
Okay.
just,
It might be terminology.
semantics.
Yeah.
I think that when you say flat, you're talking about a certain way of, like what the ordinance says.
Right.
It's flat. But in reality, because of the way things, how we get the money, they can add a certain percentage, depending.
Right, but it will still say, like 1 point, the total for Maine Township will remain on your property tax bill. The percentage will remain. That's what I'm saying.
So it's flat in the sense that your bill, your property tax bill will not be raised.
At least our portion
Right.
of it.
Yeah, right, the Maine Township.
Yeah.
So does the second property tax bill get raised?
No, none of them would get raised
Right.
on the property tax owner. And if you lower it, I mean, Donna talked about making news. We're gonna make some really bad news next year because historically, I am really not, I just can't think that it's sound financial practice to use reserves as operating funds and then go deeper. And then since starting at that lower amount, you're absolutely have to raise it. There's no question you have to raise it. And you have to raise it by correspondingly more. And to address some of those concerns, we have made those kinds of cost savings. In fact, we were able to do the Mainly News. We saved $5,000 off the cost, the yearly cost of the Mainly News. And the reason that it is mailed is to take into account, we did a survey, many of the seniors and elderly people do not have computers, do not want it on computers, and will not read it if it's on computers. And we want them to know the services that we have because we have a huge Mainstreamers program, which is probably one of the best, obviously, because Marie plus 3 other parts of it won awards at the Township Conference. But we did reduce it from 8 pages to 6 pages and started advertising, and which increased the revenue to offset. Additionally, with respect to GA, I cut out 3, what I believe, unnecessary mailers. And actually the LIHEAP process worked much smoother this year and saved us approximately $9,000. I mean, I think I talked about those things at the September board meeting. But just so the audience and the public knows, I have asked every department head to cut their budget by 10%. So that is what they will be presenting to us, Dana and myself, when we have our department head meetings. And so we intend to, and that's why with Levy 1, I felt very comfortable with being able to, general assistance was top heavy. And because it had the lower amount of direct shelter, but it still had the reserves. And since that was a place where I had been able to save money on mailers and other associated costs, and most importantly of all, I would never leave our general assistance people out in the cold. We can transfer to that fund if it were necessary. We can't take in. So whatever you do tonight, you're stuck with. It's basically,
Yeah, well, from my understanding is in Park Ridge was an example of somebody going double-digit negative on the tax levy and then in a year or two getting back up 25%. Now, we may not be in a position if we set a levy that deep under zero, because if the Springfield and the governor sign a bill that indicates that the tax levy is frozen for 2 or 3 years, well, you're going to be stuck with the lower levy until that changes. And who knows when it would change, if it would change. So it's a little dangerous to lower it to that extreme, or even, in my opinion, thinking of going negative at all.
I'm comfortable with lowering it 5%, and I'll tell you why, if not more than that. What we're asking this levy to be in this first levy one, which is the flat levy, is $5,591,454. And what we've spent, I've looked at income statements, I've looked at budgets, I've looked at the levy, I've looked at the actual numbers. The actual numbers of what we spent the last 4 years, we've never gone over $5 million with those two funds together for an annual expenditure. In 2017, the levy that was done in November 16, a year ago, we've spent a total of $4,932,488. 2016 was $4,256,188. 2015 was $4,500,525. And 2014 was $4,128,959. So those were actual expenditures that we have, that you can get off of the audit reports that we have. So we do budgets, we have the income statements, and we have expenditures. So never have we gone in those two funds above $5 million. So to levy $5,591,000, I think is something more than what we need. And in the other consideration is what we have in reserve for those two funds. So with a less than $5 million budget in town fund alone, we currently have $4,884,000 in reserve. And that's from the audit book, which I referenced and put on the website so people can see and reflect it in minutes, which is the February 2017 audit book. And in general assistance, we're asking in this flat levy for $893,000, and we have, as Claire had referenced, the only year that we had a little bit less than that we spent this last year in our expenditures in our audit, $881. So I can't see how we could, not consider lowering it when we have, and what I meant to say is that what we have in reserves is $1,672,000 reserved for general assistance. So between those two funds, we have $6 million in reserves. And not that we're budgeting to dip into reserves, but as you recall, we had the meeting to talk about doing a tax rebate and a tax refund as a consideration, because we know we have excess and we have the opportunity to give it back to people. That would have been a very arduous process that would have probably resulted in, with 130,000 residents, and I don't know what portion of those would get a return, but what makes more sense to me is have a longer lasting effect. Give some relief to the residents that need it from all this taxation that we've experienced.
it won't give any relief
It won't
at all.
say.
That is
5%
false.
relief
It
is
won't
something.
give any
No,
relief.
but it won't be reflected on the
It will not
tax
show on your
bill.
tax bill at
It
all.
won't reduce their tax bill at all. So that's not
Well-
giving relief. That's where the misconception is. It's you can say, oh, we reduced it 5% and
It's a
it
nice
looks great in the
soundbite.
headlines, but it's not really truthful when it's not reflected in your tax bill. Your tax bill is not going to be reduced. You're still going to pay the same amount in your township bill than you do if you leave it flat. So you can have a great headline, but it's really not that meaningful in people's pockets.
As far as a headline, You know, economies function based on not truth. It's based on perception. When people are comfortable and they feel confident, they spend money, the economy turns. When people don't, they feel repressed, they don't. One of the notes that Donna was commenting that kind of triggered was that what type of impression do we give to the community if we sit here with this levy coming up and we don't cut this levy? We can explain till the cows come home that, gee, you may not see anything in the budget, it's not really that big of a deal when it comes to talking to the taxpayer who's taking out their checkbook. When it comes to us cutting it, all of a sudden it's $250,000. Okay? Whatever it is, the people who are the economy, who generate the funds that actually pay for these programs, because God bless a lot of these 501c3s we had in front of us, but if you couldn't pay that salary of that particular individual, I don't know if that particular individual for a particular 501c3 would be doing the job. The money's got to come from somewhere. That's why we have the ability to have these programs. Well, these taxpayers are saying, come on, guys, come on, ladies. We've had to dip into our reserves to pay our bills in our own households for the last 8 years. Also, if there's an indication of cutting taxes, whether or not you see it in your real estate tax bill, as I say, you see it in the economy, but you also see it in property values. Every time that somebody goes in to value a property, buy or sell a property, you look at what are the taxes. The higher the taxes, the lower the value of the property, the less money you get for the property. It's real simple. Here, are we in a position that we can realistically make a cut of 10%? The answer is yes. However, we compromised, you see how that, even though it's, you know, but then we came to a compromise. What I took for myself, I'm not talking for the board, for myself, it was a compromised position of 5%. The board, there's an argument that even if you cut 1%, you're going to lose this, that, or the other. Somehow, we've got to address this issue. One of the reasons why I was elected was to address this particular issue. And you have the pressures of trying to keep, as Laura talks about, the pressures of trying to keep the township services up and keep the lights on, while also looking at a budget that's affordable to the taxpayer. And I think that a compromise position, although I concur with Don Adams, I think it is not to hurt the township. I think we can do it. I think we can absolutely do it. You put $1, I'll trade you $1 for a nickel. Okay? I think you can come up with that nickel. It's 5%. Okay? 10%'s a dime. I think we can do it with good budgeting. We can do it. Necessity is the mother of invention. It can happen. And yeah, why should we do it? Why should Maine Township do it? Maine Township's been operating very efficiently. Maine Township doesn't spend money it doesn't have. Maine Township isn't throwing money around like it's nothing. They're very concerned with every action that they take. But we have to continue to serve as that example, to be responsible. I think we could be an example to these townships that decide under the pressure that Illinois is in right now to increase their levies. It's terrible. And to sit here and have a levy that's level, that's a really good idea, but it really ends up to be, in my opinion, looking at the numbers, a 3% bounce. There's a 3%, 2%, 3% bounce. I think that a good compromise position is the 5%. In that, I'm not, even though I know that in my opinion the 10% would work. But I think it's a good compromise position. The problem is, how do we do it? And I think we came up with that. It was a good solution at the last meeting. I was very happy with that. I think that would be the position I would take.
Thank you for your comments, Donna, because I think a lot of residents have expressed concern about looking to see us make cuts. And
Really? I haven't had any resident expressed to me that we were operating excessively or that we had too much portion of their property tax. In fact, I've had the contrary. Every person that has called me or asked a question or come into the assessor's office or the clerk's office has expressed the utmost gratitude that we fund the social service agencies, that we do these things. And it's Dave's analysis, respectfully, is just not correct, because it is fiscally irresponsible to not capture what you can, what is a municipality can capture that is bad government. So essentially you're penalizing a government for having operated as a good government. And you make it sound like a flat is like some sort of penalty to the taxpayer.
Well, I think when you say it's fiscally irresponsible, when we've never spent more than $5 million out of those two funds, to then say we should capture or we should levy $5,591,000.
Yes, because it's the third year, you're not looking at the
Is
law.
not responsible.
First of all,
No, you're not looking at the
Susan,
law.
first of all, you cut her off.
Right, thank you.
Laura
I
had
actually
the
waited
floor.
for you to
Laura
listen.
had the floor.
I'm sorry, I thought I waited.
But you didn't.
So the law is what I'm trying to follow. And the law says that you keep it, that you can't keep it flat beyond 3 years, okay? So, I don't know what you and Dave are gonna say next November when it's gonna have to be raised, because, quite frankly, we have literally no idea, and if we have huge healthcare, or if we have huge right, and
What did you say? I'm sorry.
huge need in general assistance. And you saw out of what you said, general assistance is dead on. That's where I took your guys' concerns into account in switching around levy one. It is dead on. I mean, it's a difference of $500 or $5,000 in terms of what was spent, and that was with 29 cases. And with the way the state's going, I'm going to use Dave's favorite argument sort of in the opposite way. With the way the state is going, our general assistance doesn't depend on the states. So our LIHEAP, we are the #1 LIHEAP site in the state. But we can't continue to do that if we have to operate perhaps with a deficit in a certain fund and then use, I'm having the brain cramp on the excess.
So reserve.
The reserves. If we end up with, in this position next year with a ton of reserves, God bless it, and we can revisit a property tax rebate. It's not off the table for the rest of your life. But what I'm saying is bad government is to, look at a budget for any particular year and say, okay, we shouldn't follow the law that allows that municipality to capture a tax that does not hurt the resident, but that can actually help the resident by being able to maybe fund more people, another psychiatrist, more therapy people, so we don't have to fund Turning Point where they take 2 buses and a train. It's those kinds of, it's a longer range thinking than this perception. I disagree strongly with Trustee Carabota's statement that truth is not the reality, that perception is. That's the problem with politics these days, is that perception has become the reality. And right now, we have the perception of being good government. And we have been at 1.4% in the town fund for 12 years. And we cut the levy 8 years ago by 25%. And yet, we spent the same amount. So, if it's cut, what I'm really in the simplest terms trying to say is, you're gonna start off in the hole, and then you're going to be persona non gratis, I mean, if you care about perception, next year. And so, to me, it is fiscally irresponsible to not, what they teach you at Toy is, it can be kept flat for 3 years. We are the only form of government that is dependent solely on property tax revenue. We do not get sales tax. We do not get gas tax. We do not get cigarette tax. We do not get the beverage. Nobody's getting a beverage tax. We don't get any of that. And so the difference between -5 and 0 is truly the whim of the clerk's office and new construction.
The one thing I'd like to add to that, Laura, is, and I understand where you're coming from, Dave, and yeah, it sounds great, it's a good headline, but the reality is, we're not saving the taxpayers any money. The tax amount that is going to get collected by Cook County and other governing bodies is going to be the same. We're just not getting our full piece of the pie that we could. So now that money's going to get funneled to government,
To Cook County.
to Cook County and other government entities that aren't as fiscally responsible. So all you're doing is rewarding them for not being fiscally responsible by us not taking what is rightfully our portion of the tax. That's my opinion.
It has nothing to do with headlines. I couldn't care less about headlines. I don't want bad headlines for the township, but I don't care about headlines. I don't care about political perception. I was talking about economic perception, the operation of the economy. There are people that are leaving the state. They are done. They have a long-term goal of getting out.
I'm talking about the state.
I'm talking about the state.
But nobody's leaving the township.
I'm being
because-
interrupted?
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm talking about the state. Okay, now we come in and we take a position as trustee of the township with people that have begged, and I have heard it, I'm not, just Susan's not the only one, saying that we've got to do something about cutting taxes. Taxes have got to be cut, no matter what. They've got to be cut. And you've got to try to adjust to a cut of those taxes. That's the perception that people want to see for the sake of the Illinois economy, for the sake, which is our economy, and for the sake of our local economy. Our villages, our towns, our townships, they want to be able to see that that we're trying to do something to help the taxpayer and the burden on the taxpayer. You can explain until the cows come home that cutting your budget or cutting your levy by $250,000 really is a drop in the bucket. It really doesn't help them anyway. And gosh, we can do a lot with that $250,000. It's really great to argue, but they want to see that cut. We can afford that cut. We can do that cut. And again, like I say, it's a very good compromise position. And really, we show example, and we give hope to the taxpayers who put us here to audit to see that we're functioning as efficiently as we can, and when we can give that money back, okay, we can give it back by way of a rebate. Oh, wait a minute, that doesn't work. Oh, wait a minute, we can give it back by way of, oh, maybe we cut our levy by 5%. Oh, okay, that's great, let's think about, oh, no, we can't do that. But don't worry, maybe we can do it in the future. Maybe we can do a rebate in 7 or 8 months, okay? It's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. I think that here, the compromise position of the nickel on the dollar, I think is the way to go.
But the thing is, we're talking about economic perception. First of all, the state's budgetary problems have zero to do with this conversation. Zero. And to mix apples and oranges is really disingenuous, because what's happening in the state has no impact on what we're doing today, and what we are doing today has no impact on the state budget. Zero. And to say, okay, we're going to reduce the levy by 5%, sounds good. Again, it sounds good, and the perception to taxpayers may be that it's good, but it's really not. It's not a wise thing to do at this time because of the challenges that we're going to be facing with possible health care increases, which they will go up, because we won't be able to be grandfathered in it, and we were getting an exceptionally good price for excellent health care. I don't take it, but the rest of the township does. And also, we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not capturing the new construction revenues, and we will end up having to raise it next year. And what we're going to do is raise it more. So instead of saying, so today we're like, oh, we can reduce it 5%, you look like a hero. Next year, you're not going to look so good, especially if you're laughing at me, but it's the truth. And you're ignoring, when you say, oh, let's reduce it 5%, you're ignoring facts
I never look like
that
a
come
hero.
into this. But what
Under
I'm saying is,
consideration.
I'm not finished.
Okay, that's why I said without interruption.
And so to say that is very myopic because you're ignoring factual facts that are coming into play that have been explained. And you're just like single-minded saying, oh no, we're going to reduce it 5%. Everybody's going to be happy because we promised a tax break, but you're not helping them. It's not helping them. It is not going to help them in the long term. It's very short-sighted.
So
And it's
Kim,
not
are you
helping them.
suggesting?
And, let me finish. There was one other thing I was going to say. And then there is a good possibility that the property taxes will be frozen with the state. And we are going to be in dire trouble in 2-3 years. Because we're not going to have any latitude. Okay, I'm finished.
So you're suggesting that it's more fiscally responsible to increase 600,000 over what we've spent last year?
We're not
No.
increasing anything,
Well,
Susan.
The levy amount, which you are levying for,
Zero.
which is
We're levying.
$5,591,000, that is the levy amount.
That's the same as last year.
It's
that
the
is
same
levy.
as last year.
It's the same as last year. So what is
But the actual expenditure is what I'm referring to. What we actually spent was $4,932,000.
That is the
And the
budget.
year before, we spent $4,256,000. And the year before that, we spent $4,500,000. So we've never gotten close to $5 million. So for you to say it's fiscally irresponsible
It is
to
fiscally
levy,
irresponsible.
I don't agree with that. And for you to say that it has zero to do with the residents of Maine Township.
No,
it
that's
has
not what I
everything to
said.
do.
No, I said it
Okay.
has zero to do with the state's budget crisis. It has zero to do with that, which is fact. What we do here today will not impact the state's budget crisis, and what the budget crisis with the state has to do has nothing to do with what we do here today.
The
So if
individual-
you compare them, it is very disingenuous.
Okay, we're talking about the individual resident
Yeah,
that
but the
pays
individual-
property tax.
The levy just authorizes collection of property
They
taxes.
pay from all
It
sources.
just authorizes collection of property taxes.
Right.
Now, the budget provides the authority to spend. It doesn't mean that you're going to spend all of it, because you don't know that. At the end of the day, you budget in, but not necessarily at the end of the day, you will spend it all. So there's two different things with this. The levy authorizes the collection of property taxes, and the budget provides the authority to spend it. But not that you have to spend it all, or you will, because we didn't do the budget yet. Right. Did we?
Correct, but we're authorizing, as you just said.
We didn't do the budget yet.
Authorizing the collection.
I hope you're championing to District 63 like this, like you are here to reduce theirs, or, you know, where you work. But this is like,
So I'm gonna say, the reason that, and then I think that everybody's made their, the reason it's really such an incredibly fiscally irresponsible decision to do that. 5% reduction is not a compromise. Keeping it flat is actually a so-called compromise. When you have almost every other township, except one, being forced to raise their levy because they irresponsibly lowered it. You know, history repeats itself, and that is why I'm a big fan of, and a student of history. However, to Dave's point, it is not just $250,000. That is, again, a misperception. So levying minus 5% is $250,000 plus the loss of new construction that will go to Cook County instead of to our township and our township residents in the form of services, low program fees, and having the ability to have departments like EMA and the award-winning services we do. But not only that, it's going to be lowered even further by the PTEL, by the people who win the property tax appeals. And they have no such qualms about either their commercial property tax appeal or their personal property tax appeal. So you could be looking at a loss of $500,000. So at which point, you know, you can't so wouldn't it be better to have the money that then you can say, oh, wow, we could introduce something that they really want, or we could give it back, than to lower what you can even ever get and start with an amount that if property tax freezes, you are behind the 8 ball and we are forever playing catch up. So I just want you guys to be aware, it's not $250,000. It's an unknown amount more, and there is absolutely nothing fiscally wrong with keeping it flat. It's recommended by every expert in township government, every person at TOY who does work in this field, and may not be as, actually I think it's a very sexy headline that we didn't raise taxes, but it is allowing us to capture money that can be used by our residents in Maine Township, not by, you know, other Cook County residents. Susan's a big proponent of everything should be for Maine Township, rightfully so. And by willfully not allowing to capture that money that you possibly could, you're literally just like showering it over at Cook County. In other communities, as Pete said, that we're probably not as fiscally responsible as we have been. Does anybody else wish to make any more comments?
I do. So if we don't reduce it and we keep it flat, there's no effect on our constituents, our taxpayers, our residents, Maine Township whatsoever. None. Zero. If we increase it up to 5%, still no difference to the taxpayer, no difference to the residents, no difference to Maine Township. Absolutely none.
You mean on the bill itself?
On the bill itself?
No. Well, yeah, I guess the property tax.
Right, no. Cook
Okay.
County is going to do what they're going to do.
Now, are we talking about this year, because we're a year in arrears? Are we talking about?
Every year.
Every year from now on, if
They always
we
have.
go up to 5%, there is no change in our property.
Correct,
Like
they
our
will not
levy-
give us 5%.
Okay, our levy does not have a thing to do with our property taxes, is that what?
Basically, unless you were to increase it, I mean, Cook County isn't, yeah, unless you hold a truth in taxation hearing and you're going way above 5%, which you probably would have to do next year if you decrease, because you have to have a truth in taxation hearing when you go over 5%. So it does not have any effect, because what Susie is trying to say, it authorizes Cook County. All it does is authorize Cook County to release the money. So lowering it does have an effect, because they won't give you what you properly, based on your amount of residents, based on how you've lived your, you know, how we have operated based on new construction costs. They won't give you that. You
Okay.
won't get anything above.
So in other words, they say, oh, you don't need it? Okay.
Yeah,
you don't
you're
get
never
anything.
getting it.
And you don't get the money that you get.
Doesn't that, I'm sorry for.
No, that's, so in other words, they say, oh, okay, you don't need it, so you don't get that. Plus, you don't get the money from the appeals.
Right.
Okay,
So then it further reduces it, and we don't know what that number is.
okay.
In the,
So then in the future years, how does that not get factored into our property tax number?
Because it's going to other entities of government, not us.
Okay, so then say we want the whole 5%. Are you saying that if we say instead of flat, we want a 5% increase?
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to say 4.9.
Okay, 4.99,
Okay.
whatever. Say we say 4.9. Are you saying our property taxes still don't increase?
I am absolutely saying that Cook County
Not-
clerks will not give it to you.
Not
You will
this-
not get it.
Right,
But we can ask for it with no penalty.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. We
And our
could have done
property
that.
taxes for our residents don't change.
They absolutely do not.
It's not necessarily.
That's not it.
Depends on
Well,
the-
if
Depends
they-
on the state equalizer.
Well, right, but I'm
Appraised
saying for this
value.
year with the state equalizer
What about the
and
CPI?
the CPI.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's not, we could ask for 4.99 without having a truth in taxation hearing. In my experience in 16 years, it has little, if anything, to do with what the clerk gives us. So they're gonna give you either CPI or 3%, whichever, because they're going to give you what you need to operate based on what you're keeping flat or what you've asked for. So next year, what would be the sound fiscal practice, in my opinion only, is keeping this flat, raising next year $500.
yeah, but what Claire is saying, I think, is, okay, if you raise it 4.999%, CPI is 3%, they give us the 3%, what effect would that have on each individual's property tax? Would that raise it 50 cents, would that raise it $1, or 2
Well, I
That's
think
what
it
she's
would,
saying.
it's hard to say. I
And
think it would raise it because we are now one, but on the other hand, it has never,
So that's what I'm saying.
it doesn't raise it unless you,
Okay, so when you say that the property taxes are not affected, I just can't see how that is the case when I look at what property taxes, how they're measured, how they're set, all this goes into it. So
you're
how,
looking at, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're looking at municipality. If you look at Maine, it's been steady, it's been the same.
you're saying the 1.4%?
Yes.
Okay. But it can change, right? I mean, if I look at history and I look at the percentages of increase, there's not a lot of big upticks or,
Right.
okay? So that's why that 1.4% hasn't changed, but we can affect it by big increases, big decreases.
Well, we raised it 3%.
But it works off of the equalized assessed value
Right.
too, is what people pay in their taxes.
Right.
That's why they come to us and try to get their assessed value lower.
Well, so what I'm just thinking is that it absolutely does affect the overall property taxes because you have a set base in our communities. We have to come, it's a zero-sum game. We have to come up with an amount of tax base, right? And so either that equalizer amount's gonna change or something's gonna give. So our levy,
Not
maybe
this
it's
year.
just infinitesimal,
But
it
not
is
this year,
one
that's
of
what
the
we're trying to
factors.
We had our reassessment already, our triennial reassessment,
Right.
the values changed. Now people are going.
No, I'm
to
being
that.
interrupted. I just want to finish because I'm not going to be able to remember everything
But
that I'm
we
saying.
had it, and that's already changed, they raised that, now people have come in.
No, what was your question?
I don't even remember. My point was that I think that property taxes are affected by many factors, including our levy. I do not believe that our levy has nothing to do with our property tax base. I just can't believe that's true when I look at how property taxes works. So I'm not saying that we should decrease or increase by a big number. I don't believe in arbitrary anything. I don't even like the 5%. I would rather, but I know that, I mean, look, that's not how we did it, that's fine. Our estimate was based on a percentage, I'm okay with that. But I'm okay with it because the number comes close to what we need. And I know this is not budgeting, I know we're gonna be doing budgeting in the past, but let's face it, all this is about covering our expenses. So you could call it expenses, you could call it budgeting, you could call it spending, whatever you call it, we have to cover those expenses. That's why we need the revenue to cover the expenses. When I look at the expenses, I think the 870 in our levy 2 is a little light. I would, if it were me, I would juggle this or change this or apportion it so that.
And what is the problem with a flat? I'm just wondering what's the problem with that?
Just like I said last month, I think that over assessing or the levy being more than what we have spent and what we have budgeted is not necessary.
You do understand that you're giving up income that is the only source of income that will go to a different community that doesn't have, and will result in potentially hurting residents here. I mean, for example, if you want to increase social service spend, or I don't know how to explain it any better, because it really will have a huge effect, especially if it freezes. Then you're stuck.
So I think what you're saying is, okay, so there are a lot of factors that go into property taxes, especially in Park Ridge, we have high property taxes, but you don't see how there wouldn't be a direct correlation between lowering this by 5% and your property value. But well, you said that lowering the levy and the taxes would increase their property values.
No, that's what Dave said. I didn't say anything about values. I have no experience on appraisals. I don't know anything about
So
that.
Susie started to respond to that, and I don't know how would that impact it?
I don't think that's relevant to this discussion. So
Well, it
let's
was your
not-
discussion.
I didn't talk about values.
No, but I'm talking about the lowering it 5%. How is it gonna affect the taxpayer's bill, right? Isn't that what you want to know?
Yes,
And what goes
values.
into it?
What value?
What goes into the assessment? Well, the assessment is the property value, isn't it?
I was talking about the levy, not the assessment.
Right, but it's in relation to the levy.
It's all related. That was really my point. Thank
Right.
you very much for bringing it all together. I think this is all related. So I think that if we can reduce the levy, that's going to be better for our residents because it should reflect that in reducing the taxes.
But
It won't.
it won't.
It won't
You
reduce the
can say
taxes,
it's a little
and we will be
possible,
losing
but-
revenues.
I understand about losing revenue when it's decreasing levy, but the
No,
whole.
No,
not just the reduction
Not
in
just-
the levy,
right.
you reduce opportunities for revenues. The budgeting, construction, and what was it?
The assessments.
And the assessments, which we don't know. That's a gray area. So, and it's not just the 5%, is what
That's what I was trying
I
to
was
say.
trying to say. It's okay, we're going to reduce it 5%, but then you're not only, it's not that simple. You're not going to just reduce it 5%. When you reduce it 5%, the county will only give you that amount. You can't get anything else. If you leave it flat, you're not raising the taxes, but you still have the opportunity to capture other revenues, which you don't have if you reduce it. That's it.
One thing is that there is no giving back. The taxpayer gets the message from me, is any message I can give you. Historically, there's no giving back. There is no giving back. Giving back is a form of a rebate. Rebate's going to be too costly. We've been through all that. So what they've taken in, these revenues, they're not coming back. We're also saying that we're losing the opportunity to grab other revenues and use a term revenue in government, when the term is taxes, when you're looking at economics, we're giving up certain tax opportunities, revenues, as they say, that we don't need. So that's got to be put into the agenda. How do you give back anything that's over, let's say you have a lot that's, in your reserves left over, how do you give it back? It's real simple, one way you don't.
Well, there's.
And the only other way you can do it is with cutting your level.
Or providing more services. You
Which-
can give back by providing more services.
Which
to
is
the
more
residents.
programs and more, right. And
But you're
that
still
depends
giving them
on
back.
whether or not the person that actually writes that check, that goes to work, and works hard, and funds it, or pulls out of their savings, or breaks a CD, or whatever they do to pay those real estate taxes, if that's what they want to see. And right now, I know that those who've come to me have said that they want to be able to see a cut.
Because they don't understand that they're actually losing when you cut the levy. So if you explain to them by cutting the levy, you would actually be losing something, not gaining something, then they might feel differently.
All right, I'm going to call the question, and Clerk Gialamas, the motion on the table is to pass the first levy to keep it flat at $5,591,454.
Supervisor Moraz.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
It was
Trustee
already
Jones.
motion and second.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
No.
Trustee McKenzie?
No.
Trustee Sweet?
No.
All right, well, it's up to one of you guys to propose whatever levy that you would like to, because there was some discussion, and we should probably pick between 2 and 3.
Well, I would like to propose the tax levy ordinance, levy number 2, that we've been handed out. And that is a 5% reduction to general assistance and the town fund, and 224,792 GA reduction, and 54,781 town fund reduction. I don't know if this is proper, but I would like to change by maybe $10,000 or $20,000 the apportionment here, just to cover the general assistance fund to meet last year's, or the fiscal year ended February 28, 2017's actual spending of $881,637. If that is appropriate with my motion, and decrease the town fund by the same amount, but a total of $5,311,881.
No, you can do the appropriate line item transfer if needed, because
Yeah, I don't have
that's an
that.
impossibility to
Yeah, we
do.
have to sign.
This was already put on the website, this was already sent to you guys. It's been a month and a half, and a week that everybody's had this, so we can't start moving the numbers around, but it's easily, if in a need, can have a line item transfer.
I second that.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
So levy 2 is we're reducing,
5% and taking it from,
just general assistance.
taking it, proportioning, instead of reducing all funds, 5%, doing it based on what was realistic numbers.
Number that you choose to.
The things that are star.
Number 2.
Number 2. So it reduced town fund by $54,781 and reduced GA by $224,792.
For a again, for the record, Laura raised a good point, and that if you're going to reduce, you want to reduce the GA because you can always transfer from the town fund back into GA. You can't transfer from general assistance back into town fund. So rather than cutting across the board, which is what I seriously wanted to see happen, I did take that into consideration, that we did get that in our packets. It gave a lot of thought, where if the gravamen comes out of general assistance, we leave town fund basically alone, we're actually able to transfer back into GA if we need it. Versus if we take it out of town fund, whatever's taken out of town fund, if we leave it at GA, we can't transfer it back. We can't go that way. So it's the same 5% proposal, but with Laura's change in that regard, which I think is a good point. I think it's a real substantial point. So I would concur with that.
Is there any more discussion? Having a motion, and did someone second it?
I did.
Okay, having a motion and a second, can you call the roll?
Supervisor Morass?
No.
Trustee Jones?
No.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
All right, now, moving on to road district tax levy ordinance. Need a motion to pass our 2017 RB-3 with a 2% increase. Do I have a second for this motion?
Second.
Or first, I'm sorry. Kim, can you make this motion to get this started? Oh.
This one?
Yeah. 2%. Oh, that's right, yeah.
Oh. Okay. Motion to pass the Highway Commissioner, Maine Township Road District tax levy for the sum of $2,603,101, which was a 2% increase over 2016.
And over the estimate. And I will second that motion. And now, having a motion and a second, I believe
I'll make some
he
comments.
wants to make some comments.
I want to make 2 points, one from a practical application. Some of the unknowns we share with the township fund, particularly health insurance. But in addition to that, we're subject to weather concerns, flooding, the amount of snow that's going to fall, the amount of times we have to go just to spread salt when there isn't even snow, just when there's rain that freezes over. We've already had 3 instances of that, even though we haven't really had any substantial snowfall. The cost of commodities, particularly salt, asphalt, can wildly fluctuate in terms of cost. Salt can be $46 one year and $87 the next. So I think 2%, which is the CPI, is a reasonable amount to ask for. It's not predatory or going to affect the tax bill that much, but it gives us a little protection for health costs, commodity costs, labor costs in terms of overtime for combating ice, snow, rain, which is totally up to nature and God. It's not, it can't be predicted. And then we have equipment concerns. We'd like to get the street sweeper is on its last legs. That has to be addressed next year. So there's all kind of reasons practically why the 2% is an appropriate amount. And I wish I would have found this 3 weeks ago. try to simplify matters a little bit. I put on everybody's desk page 171 of the township, I believe it's called Laws and Rules Handbook. And I put a yellow line through the statement in the middle under 3, filing. The road district levy is first determined by the highway commissioner and then adopted by the township board, and then in parentheses, which may not amend the commissioner's levy request. Now, you can scrutinize my budget all you want, but the levy request, if I request 2%, the law says that that's what you have to abide by. And the person who wrote this is Carrie Lynn Effort, and she responded today. You have asked us what the appropriate procedure is for the approval of the road district's levy. This is the relevant portion of the highway code that says the highway commissioner determines the road district's levy. Then there's subsection C, but the pertinent is on the second page, pertinent information where it's highlighted. It says, the last part says, road district commissioner, as the case may be, shall levy and certify to the county clerk the amount necessary to be raised by taxation for road purposes. So this is essentially an inexact science. We don't know what we're going to get, but I think it's not an outrageous figure to ask, and I am protected by the Illinois compiled statutes, as it's clearly stated, both in the handbook and also from the person who wrote it in the handbook, the appropriate law that covers this subject. So, I would just ask for a vote on the 2%. We'll scrutinize the budget as needed in 3 or 4 months. Everything's open to debate then, but in terms of this levy, if I, as the highway commissioner, determine that 2% is the appropriate amount, that's, according to this law, is what the board has to approve. And I apologize for not knowing this or showing this information to you 3 weeks ago when we first discussed that.
Is there any other comments or discussion?
Yes, thank you. Sure. Again, we went over this at length at the last meeting before coming up with the proposal that was voted upon. And the keeping it level with no increase was the compromise position that was sought by myself. Looking over the numbers and the need, and I think Walter is an excellent steward of the funds, so there's no reflection about that. Without rehashing all, and it is a different situation. The road fund is a different situation, and we went over all that in the last meeting extensively through our local plan. And I'm seeing that at this point, keeping it level also does keep the door, apparently from what I'm told, keeps the door open for possible increases in any event. I think keeping it level is the way to go, even looking at the numbers that have been spent and looking at the history of the budget. So I would not be inclined to go with the 2%. We went over that, we covered the 2%.
I think what Wally was saying is that he capitulated mid-meeting, or agreed, and then looked at the numbers again, and actually, you guys don't really have a choice.
But in all honesty, it was widely discussed that that was
How can we
just...
not have a choice?
Oh,
if we're
because of
being
the
asked-
statute.
Well, we're asked to vote.
Yeah, well, this is not my law. This
It's
is
not
what-
mine either, but I mean, you're asking us to vote. If you're asking us to vote, then tell us.
But it's still, it's either gonna have
That
to
makes no
file
sense.
some legal action. And-
many things in life don't make any sense.
It really doesn't make any sense, but if you read page 171, and I certain all of you have read the township, the laws.
I think, yeah.
So the township's levy, I didn't bring it up because he had said that he could live with zero, and then when the estimate of the salt and all of the other, all right, so township's
I don't see
levy
an estimate of the
ordinance.
salt. I mean, I have not received anything that shows any estimate of increased salt numbers or increased.
Well, no, we don't know that.
No, that's what I
It's like
just said.
it's like predicting the price of gold 2 years from
Exactly,
now.
so we're just speculating, that's not.
No, we do know,
But I do know that it has been $87 in the past, currently it's
and they were
46.
supposed to have a really bad
You know,
winter.
you can't predict commodity prices unless you're Hillary Clinton 40, 30 years ago.
That's right.
My only point is that, under the law, the township's levy ordinance, the road district's levy is first determined by the highway commissioner and then adopted by the township board, parentheses, which may not amend the commissioner's levy request. That's about as clear as you can make it in a statute. And
We shouldn't be asked to vote.
Well,
I didn't
we
make
have to
the
vote
rules.
to authorize or
Yes,
authorize.
we'll see what
As a
happens.
point of fact, I just want,
Well, that's-
just for the public to know what is going on, we're asked to levy $2,603,001. And in the past 4 years, we have spent, in the 16-17 year, we spent $1,836,600.
We also didn't get the full amount that we asked for either.
That's what we actually spent. We budgeted $2,103,000, but we spent $1,800,000. So that's almost, $800,000 more. The year before that, we actually spent $1,937,397. The year before that, in 14-15, we spent $1,796,666. And in 13-14, we spent $1,991,000. So it's a significant increase over what we actually have
Okay.
spent.
Another factor which I didn't mention, there's probably an 80% chance that the legislature and the governor will freeze property taxes next year. Whatever we do here today is going to be stuck for 2 or 3 years because there'll be a zero levy, whether we need it or want it or like it. So that's another factor, and it's just the CPI, and there are, I thought it was we spend less than we asked for, but we also get less than we asked for in terms of property tax. Right now, with 3 months to go, we still have 16% less property tax than we asked for. And, December, January, maybe February will pick up if they get the mailings out, but it's going to be under what we asked for. And my recollection has been like that the entire time. This is a very inexact science. I mean, we don't know precisely what we're going to get. Now, we don't have the kind of reserves that GA and Town Fund have, so, this has a greater impact on the highway department than it does maybe those entities. But, the law backs me up on this, and it may be stupid law, but there's many, many stupid laws and many, many stupid aspects of life. So this is just one of them.
Well, we still have 42% this year in our budget.
Okay, you realize that
Percent wasn't-
there's a whole section that's devoted to winter expenditures. We haven't tapped it,
Right, so
you'll see
maybe
that
that's why-
in December a little bit, January and February.
Right. I mean, that's why we have a bigger balance in the last 3 months.
Yeah, so if it's a nasty winter, which
Right.
is supposed to be 20% above the average snowfall, and colder than it's supposed to be, and they predict, well, that goes into the new fiscal year, but they predict a very cold March. Now, whether they're right or not, I have no way of knowing. But you'll see that amount dipped into the last 3 months of this fiscal year, because
Right.
basic wages will come out of that fund, which they came out of a different fund before. So this will get chewed up. And, you know, we're not going to be in that position. The last 3 months of the fiscal year are generally rather expensive ones in terms of the overall budget. And I appreciate the fact that, you know, maybe, you know, there were a couple of things. Why would they ask you to have a prevailing wage when you know you have to pay the prevailing wage? Why do they ask you to approve the prevailing wage? Well, they just do, as an affirmation that you're going to pay it. But you're going to have to pay it whether you vote no or yes or abstain. That's another thing. Why do they ask if you can have IMRF when, you know, several months before you set the parameters of what elected officials who can get IMRF, but then you say that they can't get IMRF. So, you know, why do they bother phrasing it? You know, there's a lot of things that we vote on that are just perfunctory and tradition or some kind of affirmation to a given principle that we really can't change. And I think because of the highway, because it is a separate taxing body, and there are some things that the board has control over or has input on, but there are other things and certain aspects of it that the highway commissioner can do without board approval that maybe the supervisor can't, because it's a separate taxing body. So, you know, I didn't make the law, but it's very, you know, I don't want to be in a position that I have to think about signing this, because I know by signing it, let's say signing 0%, that technically that's not what I want. But, you know, I'll make a decision tonight or tomorrow if that's going to be the case. But I'm first going to ask for a vote on the 2%, because I think the law is quite clear about what was stated. I just regret that I didn't propose this 3 weeks ago, because it would have simplified matters, or should have simplified matters.
Any other discussion?
Can I say something?
Sure.
It does seem that you have the legal right to ask for as much money as you're asking for, and that you have the sole authority to raise the levy. However, you know, we keep hearing that our property taxes continue to go up, and when I sit and I listen to the City of Des Plaines, the Park District, Maine Township, the school board, all of them saying, give me more, and that's our legal right to do that. And I think that we need to think about, as a board, the board needs to think about lowering our property taxes rather than raising it. But you have the ability, and so go ahead, take our money.
Would you, I'm sorry, I'm going to make one comment to the public at large. Your streets and Des Plaines do not get plowed by our highway commissioner. But, you know, when it's really bad, you would be thrilled if they got plowed by the highway commissioner, because our streets are the only ones that anybody can get through. Park Ridge cut their plowing, Des Plaines cut their plowing, and so we are major arterial roads, both in flooding and in snow. Well, he's not asking for the moon. It's a 2% CPI. It, again, is going to, your overall, if you go back on it, you look at your Maine Township portion of your tax bill, that has not gone up in 16 years.
I understand that.
And it still won't.
But you know what? All the government bodies added together.
But we are not that government body, so we govern differently from that government body.
You know, I always believe not every government is created equal.
Right.
If four
We don't get
If four
sales.
neighbors on your block are foreclosed on, does that mean that if you have adequate means and income and assets, you have to look like a pauper? I mean, this is a different form of government that does not equate to the city of Chicago, to Washington DC, Cook County, or the state of Illinois. And, you know, I don't see why people are treating it as all as one big pie when we're somewhere between 1% and 2% of your tax bill. And there are tremendous examples of waste and lack of funds and unpaid bills, but it's not here. There's no debt. You know, why should we wear some kind of sackcloth when we can, you know, at least breathe comfortably as a viable entity that doesn't screw the public? Why are we living, you know, why do we act like we're some kind of degenerate gambler or something with public funds? We're not.
Well, it's close to an $8 million budget. I don't think and yes, it's less than 2% of our tax dollars as it pertains to, relatively speaking, to every other government entity that's charging us. But that doesn't mean we should go without scrutiny or looking at saving whatever piece of tax
And
dollars.
I try and do that every day. I try and do it every day.
Is the cheapest person.
I know, but I don't think we can take, I think what we can do is, I heard a resident speak.
I meant that was wrong.
I heard a resident speak, and I want to acknowledge that people feel that way.
Well-
That it's about the individual taxpayer that's getting hit from all of these different
And you'll find
portions of government.
You'll find a crying liberal who thinks we should spend everything for everybody. I mean,
So-
this is a big country with a lot of different opinions. And, you know, you could say that your opinion is right, and you very well might be more right than somebody else's. But the fact is, you know, we're not as bad, not even close to being as bad as some of the excesses you see in other governments.
Right, but we're not measuring ourselves against somebody else.
Yes, we are. I am. Maybe you're not, but I am.
That's bad, but we can make our own independent decisions.
Well, the thing
And
that I
the
find
thing,
interesting
can I finish,
is,
Kim, please? I think the thing that is, you know, that I look at, that I struggle with, quite honestly, is the past year's spending for several years, and the fact that this is $800,000 more than that we're asking to levy for 1 year. It just doesn't, like, common sense seems to be, but I understand, you know, all of the things that you reference, the unknowns, and especially when it comes to road and bridge.
Well, plus,
we want to,
what we asked for, and we actually received up to this point, is 16% less in property tax than we actually got. So we'll get drips and drabs for the next two or 3 months, but it's not going to equal 16%. So we're actually getting less than we levy for. So it's not just that we're spending less, we're also getting less property tax.
so what I find interesting is, earlier when Dawn spoke, she said she complimented how well this board has managed the taxpayers' dollars. Claire has said it, you've said it, Dave has said it, and yet you question everything and you disregard what the expertise on the board has said. So on the one hand, it's interesting because you commend the board for keeping the taxes low for all this time and managing the money so well. And on the other hand, you're like, but what you said doesn't matter. And I just find that interesting, so I'm just an observation.
If I can say, Kim, everything that Laura says, everything that you say, everything Walter says, everything coming from that, I listen to everything. There's nothing that gets by me. And I don't think what you say is very important. Your opinion is very important. I hope you don't take that impression that it's not.
It's really not a question.
I don't think that I don't listen, Kim. So
I didn't say, I'm just saying that on the one hand, we're complimented, and the past board's been complimented on how well we managed it. And then on the other hand, it's like the points that are relevant and the arguments that are relevant and are based in fact and based in experience are totally disregarded for, I don't know, perception and misconception. And I just wish that would be a little more open and not coming with such a blind, with blinders on, and open into other people's opinions and not just, because you have set agendas. And so that's all I'm saying, is on the one hand, you can't compliment the board, or it's nice that you compliment the board on how well we've done, but then want to change everything and not listen to experience and facts. That's all I'm saying.
I think I've been very open, or I wouldn't have studied the numbers like this and spent hours looking through income statements, budgets, audits, everything. So I don't know if you are to the points that I've been bringing up about what we've actually spent. It seems like I don't hear any response back.
Because they're not related,
Because you don't look at what actual expenditures are at the.
Yeah, it's a
Call the roll.
Okay, so we're going to call the roll on the current motion on the table. Clerk Dilemmas, will you call the roll?
Supervisor Perez.
Yes.
Trustee Jones.
Well, I'm going to choose to follow the law.
That's what I'm
Illinois,
talking about, the 2%.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm making a statement with my word, is that okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, we don't normally do this, but I'm going to make a point here. I'm going to follow the law, Illinois compels statutes 200-18-5, and which is to say that the levy is first determined by the highway commissioner and then adopted by the township board, which may not amend the commissioner's levy request. So I will vote yes.
Trustee Carabota.
Asking to vote on something where I have a choice and looking at this, I would vote no.
Trustee McKenzie.
Well, the law says that we need to adopt. Doesn't say we have to vote yes on an ordinance. I vote no.
I don't understand the distinction.
Trustee Sweet.
I echo Trustee McKenzie's sentiments or comments, and I vote no.
Okay, that being the case, I'm not going to sign the levy tonight. I'm going to consult with an attorney. You might have me by the short hairs because it's the Wednesday before Christmas, and this thing is supposed to be delivered to the clerk's office the day after Christmas. That's hardly time for an emergency suit. But just realize that there is next year, and I hope we start this procedure a hell of a lot earlier than we did this year, and there will be a fight if you have a similar position, because I think the board just violated the law.
I think there's time for an emergency suit. You can file it. Go ahead and
Yeah,
file it.
okay, yeah, and
Let's
look,
test it. If you think that's what the law says, follow the law.
I can't imagine that costing the taxpayers any money.
well, you admitted
Either
it.
does a 2%
You
increase.
admitted
It's a
right
$50,000
now.
difference. If you're willing to do that for $50,000 that you haven't spent, then go ahead and do it. But don't make that comment. That's not true. You have time to file an emergency
No,
suit.
it has to be on
You're
file
making a
by the
decision
fourth
not to, and that's
Tuesday
okay.
of December.
Well, then file it.
But let's talk about wasting more taxpayer money.
I'm not talking about wasting.
So go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, because the township will have to
Let's just,
spend
it's
it.
$50,000.
We wasted enough legal fees already on the watchdog situation and
Oh my
attorney general stuff, so let's just waste some more.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, so what do we need to figure out
I
something?
don't want to.
What do we do?
Really?
You gotta do
Oh, you want me to, okay. Alright, so, wait, hang on a second. I don't think they get.
No, that was
No.
2% was voted down.
Right, so you want
Do
me
a
to,
zero,
okay,
yeah.
that's what I'm asking,
Huh?
alright.
Because,
You just won't sign it.
yeah, I'll determine what our side.
Right, right, I got you. Alright, we're not done quite. Alright. So we're going to ask for a motion for 2016 RB6 for the road and bridge amended tax levy ordinance that the highway commissioner was hereby determined declare the sum of $2,551,962, which would be a flat levy. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Just with the correction that the ordinance is 2017-RB-6.
Yeah.
It's actually labeled.
I'm sorry, three. So it's 2017 RB-3, is that correct?
I have 6. Is it RB3?
No, it's at 3.
All right, my copy says 6. Did I get the number right?
Yes.
All right. Give me a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Oh, wait, we didn't, hang on, we have to back up.
Why?
We didn't vote on the other one.
Yes, you
Oh, I'm
did.
sorry, I'm losing it.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Having a motion and a second, call the roll.
Supervisor Moran?
No,
Trustee Jones?
because I believe in following the law and I voted for the
But you
other.
made the motion, didn't you?
I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we still have to
All
vote.
Right.
Trustee Jones?
I choose not to violate the law by voting yes, so I will vote no.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweeney?
Yes.
All right, so what we will do is that we will sign, both of them in the ways that we did it, and then you will make your determination.
I've already consulted, anticipating this, and she said, given the constraints of time and the fact that, you have to get this stuff done by next Tuesday to sign it. So that's what I'm doing.
All right, so the issue we just need.
This is 2 copies of the same. This is 2 copies of the same, right?
Same copies, yes.
Yeah. that's- Discuss it.
Wait, I'm sorry.
This is the 0.
And you know what?
What are you signing the wrong one?
I want to make sure.
That's right.
When you guys vote against the law, there's no
This one is 2017
We've
RB.
gone to law
Right,
school.
right, I know, they're both.
Oh, I see what you said. 2551962.
Oh, so it's this. Deviation, we need both.
But there's 2 copies of the same. These are both the same.
Oh, you don't want the other ones?
They're breaking the law.
It's an interpretation.
But all they're doing is voting what they're.
We don't break one.
They approve, that's fine. I already talked.
Because you have the authority, and if you want it, that's all I'm saying. So I just have to do it. No, he doesn't want to do that because he says he doesn't have to.
And they have to
Well, you should do it all. You know, another look. Constant fighting with other people.
Well, they were wrong on the IMR. I mean, the IMR.
I think we need
Do
to
we need to adjourn though?
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Can I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?